This is the video for the row D bag number 2 bag sort. So I've got this bag here set aside from before, and I've got my book. So the first one in here that's going to be modified is D9. So I'm going to put my book aside with that page open, and I still have a 4.5-inch block from the previous bag sort that I will be using here on the first block of D8. So let me get my book. So I'm going to dump out my bag. I'm going to put my D8 paper right there. And I'm going to dump out my bag over here. And let's see what fun we get into on this bag. Alright, so we've got this, and then we're just looking for 4 football pieces and 4 of these diamond things. So that should be relatively easy. And as I sort these, I'm going to pile them in like piles so that it's easier to find stuff when I go back to do the rest of the block. So let me get some of this sorted and find these pieces. So I've found my 4 footballs, and there are only the 4 in there. And then there's 4 of these. Now these don't fit exactly, but that'll be fine because they're all exactly the same, so that when you put them on your finished block, nobody's going to know. So the fact they're consistent, it's consistent to each other. It doesn't matter that they're not fitting this piece exactly. So I'm going to label these D8. So I've got my pieces labeled, and now I'm going to label my focus fabric by putting a dot on my focus fabric pieces, and the background here is the light fabric, and the focus fabric on these blocks is the darker fabric. So each of these pieces on here are going to be focus fabric. And I'm just going to mark these. And then I'm going to leave this without a dot because it's the background. If you have a directional fabric, if you look in here, this is a gingham, and each orientation of it changes the way it looks. So if you have a directional fabric, I would suggest choosing which direction you want it to go. I've had some that I've radiated from the center. I've had some that I wanted to keep exactly the same. However you want to do it, now is the time to mark it so that you don't have to worry about reorienting your pieces when you go block prep, so that you know where they go. Now's the time to do it since they're already laid out. So I'm going to bag my pieces. I'm going to take a piece of paper and write D8 on it, and then I write any notes of colors or whatever for the block prep on this if I need to, and I will stick them in my sandwich baggie and move on to the next block. Below it is the D9 block, and this is the next one. I've got a modification note here, so I'm going to go to my booklet, and you've noticed that they've taken off this outer border, which does not change the look of the block at all. So make sure you're working from this so that your pieces fit correctly. And you've got a series of rectangles and squares and triangles. And if you notice, these outside triangles are smaller than these, so we're going to have to mark those. But we're going to work on these pieces. I'm thinking that these are the same size rectangles, which they should be, but don't automatically assume that without checking it. So we're going to take one rectangle. Yep, that's the right size, and then I'm going to check it. Yep, that's the right size. These 3 are the same. So if this is the same as those, then this is the same as well. So I got that, and then I've got my squares. And I should have a lot of these. I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares of that size. Now, since I know this fits, I'm going to set this aside over here, and I'm going to I'm going to line them up on the side and make sure that they are exactly the same size, because if they're not, they'll go to another block, and that will mess up some triangles and stuff. So you want to make sure that these are the exact right size. I think that the 10 blocks, I think that the squares in here are all the same size, but you don't want to assume. So I'm going to go through here and find these pieces. So I'm just going through these triangles, and I've got 4 of the smallest size triangles, that are all the same size. And I have, these are the ones, this is the one I'm sorting to, and these are the ones that are the same size. there is a triangle that looks similar, but is actually larger than these. So I'm going through and making sure that I get the correct size. And it is kind of an obvious thing. Sometimes there are bags that are not that obvious. So that's a larger. So I'm just going to keep finishing this up. Oh, and apparently there's a smaller. Interesting. So these are the correct ones. These are these 4 plus this one is 5. But now there's a smaller one as well. So I'm going to set that aside and finish sorting through these. So I found all 12 of these triangles that go on the outside edges, not the corners. The corners are these 4 right here. So let me get those placed. So I finally got all my pieces laid out, and you've got these. Okay, first of all, let's label all these D9. So I've got them all labeled D9, and let me scoot this so I can see this. Now it's a matter of labeling the focus fabric, and it can look a little tricky, but basically you start with this square here. You've got this square and the rectangle underneath it, and then this square here. This square is background, this square here, and this square is really this rectangle, okay? So we're going to do this on this side as well. So each corner square here, 2, 3, and then 4, and then the rectangles that they touch, 4. And then in here, you've got the very center one is background, right there. This is background, and this is background, which makes these focus fabric. So you've got each square in the corners, the rectangles that they touch, and this in this row of 3 squares, there's 2 rows of 3 squares. The outer squares on the row of 3 squares are the focus fabric. Now, before you mark for directional or any of that other stuff, I'm going to take a ballpoint pen just because it's different looking than this. And I'm going to put the letter A, or whatever you want to do, on these outside triangles because I don't want to get them mixed up with the rest of the triangles. So I've got A on those 2. And this way I know that these are the outer triangles. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to write the letter A in here so that when I do my block assembly, I know why I marked a letter A on here. Now, you can mark for directional at this point if you have a directional fabric. And I'm going to bag this up and stick it in my baggie with the piece of paper labeled D9 and move on. We turn the page and we get to D10. D10 has also got a modified notation on it. And the modification takes this center section here and makes it the entire block. So we're going to get rid of all these borders here. So this way it's a lot easier to work with on English paper piecing. Now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times 2. So 24 of the same size triangles. And we're going to test to make sure that we find exactly 24 of the exact same size triangles. And then there's 2 squares. That's all. Just 2 squares and 24 of the same size triangles as we dig through here. So I'm going to dive into my... First I got to find the right size, which is statistically in my favor. And then use that one to measure to make sure that I get all of them the same way. Okay, so I have 4 of these type of triangles, 2 of these and 2 of these for another block, and then the rest of the triangles, there's 24 the same exact size for this block. So it's just a matter of plopping them up there and sorting them out. From a square standpoint, I've got 2 squares exactly the same size. There's nothing else that's close. I've got 4 squares that are slightly larger, that are all the same size to each other, and 1 even bigger, and a rectangle-ish looking thing for another block. So that should be relatively easy to find the triangles. So let me get these laid out. So I've got my D10 pieces laid out, and now it is time to label them. Now that my pieces are labeled, I'm going to look at the diagram here. So the dark fabric is my focus fabric, and so those big squares are background, and the triangles surrounding it are focus fabric. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these are half square triangle units. So we've got focus fabric, focus fabric, focus, focus, and then it flips on this side. So we've got focus fabric, focus fabric, focus fabric, focus fabric. So that in this center section here, you've got 2 opposing focus and 2 opposing background. This is also the time to mark your directional fabric if you have one. I'm using solid batiks on this colorway, so I don't have directional patterns, and I will make up my tag to put this in my baggie and move on to the next block. Next is D11, and you'll notice that I've got some markings on here. I had worked on this block for another quilt of a different colorway, and there's some tricks on these pieces. So you've got these triangles. There's 4 of these China triangles, and then you've got these diamonds, 4 of these kind of diamonds, and then there's 4 triangles left, but 2 of them are one size and 2 of them are a smaller size, and that's because they are on a rectangle. So this is the run rectangle. This is where this goes, okay? And because it's a rectangle, it's got 2 sides that are, this side is a different size than this, obviously, and so I've got 2 triangles that are one smaller than the other. So the smaller triangle is this top part and the bottom part. Oops. If I can have some dexterity and put these where I need them to go. And then the other 2 go on the side. The reason I got an A and a B should be obvious, but since these are the same, I labeled them A, and these are the same, I labeled them B, because when they're on the table here, they can look quite similar. So I wanted to make sure that when I was block prepping, I knew exactly which one went where, because I had a directional fabric on this particular colorway. And these triangles, so that's this, we're going to check to make sure all 3 of them, or all 3 sides are the same, and it looks like they are. I thought they weren't, but okay. So apparently I thought they weren't, and which is why I made an arrow. But I also made an arrow for my directional. So I indicated my directional because I wanted my fabric to radiate out in however you want to look at it. So the sides don't matter because they're this equilateral triangles. So I'm going to place these, and then I'm going to place, these, okay, let me get this one here. But these diamonds, these 4 diamonds, actually get appliqued onto these pieces. So these pieces slot into here. I promise they do. And then the diamonds get appliqued onto it. So let me finish getting these laid out. Now that I've got my pieces laid out, I'm going to mark these. I'm going to put these in the same orientation, just cause. But we're going to mark my pieces, the D11. So these are now labeled D11, but we're going to label my focus fabric, which is going to be the center rectangle and the big triangles, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and the diamonds, which I did not label D11. So let me get those labeled. So I've got my diamonds labeled D11 and my focus fabric dots. And now I'm going to do my ink pen mark with my A and B. So this is A and this is B. And because I don't have directional, I'm not going to worry about the arrows, but I could mark my arrows if I had a directional fabric. I'm going to bag this up and move on to D12. Now I'm on D12. D12 is the last modified block of the D row. So we're going to go to the book. And what they've done is they have divided this dart into 2 pieces so that you can paper piece it. And it says beware of directional pieces because these are right hand and left hand. So if you flip them the other way, they won't work. So you're going to have 4 pointing one way and 4 pointing the other, which is going to be taken care of because that's why we write on them, so that everything is going to be proportional. So these are applique on. You're going to have a big square here, which is why you have 4 squares left. And then there is 2 short rectangles and a long rectangle and all the little tiny darts. So let me get this laid out in a way. So I've got this laid out, and these are my darts for each corner, and I wanted to lay them out somewhere I could write on them and know which one is which. So I'm going to put D12 on all of these pieces first. I've got all of my pieces in the center marked, and my darts are labeled as well. And now I'm going to look at my picture here for the focus fabric is the back. So the focus fabric is just going to be these corner squares, and the cross pieces are going to be background, and each dart is going to be background as well. And you want to mark your directional if you've got directional considerations on your D12. These are going to be part of your block assembly. Just make sure that you've got the D12s up when you do your block assembly, and we will cover how to handle these little skinny things on the block assembly video. So now I'm going to bag all of these up and move on to the last block of this bag. So finally we're on the last block of this bag, which is D13, and there is a total of 5 pieces left. You've got 4 corner triangles and 1 big center square that's on point. This block is perfect for featuring a focus fabric or fussy cutting from a print or something like that. I've seen some really fun things. I think Jess has got a couple of them in the booklet as well. So I am going to lay these pieces out and label them D13. So I've got these labeled, and now I'm going to mark my focus fabric, which is the center is the background, the light fabric is the background, so the outside corners is focus fabric. And one last reminder, you're going to want to label your directional if you have such considerations. I'm going to bag this up with my baggie, and this now concludes the bag number 2 bag sort of the row D Dear Jane paper pieces kit.